Hello, I'm Jared.
And I'm Ebony, and this is his
And hers.
Warhammer 40k.
Yay!
Welcome to episode 8.
8. And today we will be discussing The First Wall by Gav Thorpe, which is the third Siege of Terra novel. And, Ebony, how did you feel about it?
Spoiler alert, Horus does not fight the Emperor. That's how I feel about it.
Ebony is obsessed with getting to Horus fighting the Emperor as quickly as possible.
I feel like that's the part. That's what everyone wants to see. That's what I want to see. I want to see the Emperor kick Horus's butt.
I can just give you the 20-year-old lore that has that scene detailed.
No, I want the good stuff. I want the full thing, but I don't want it to take 19 million books.
Well, it will.
Okay.
So,
but this one's not bad.
Not bad is about what I can say for it as well.
Yeah.
Didn't super love this one.
There are parts that I love.
Yeah.
There's one part that I love. There's one part that I love. And there's a second part that is hilarious, but I don't really love it. I wish it were over. It's awkward.
The book is primarily broken down into 3 storylines, I'd say. In the first one, you have Perturabo and the Iron Warriors attacking the Lion's Gate spaceport. Basically an enormous tower that goes into space,
that spaceships land on.
Yeah, that spaceships land on. Taking it from the Imperial Fists and in order to have a place for them to land Titans.
Yep. And I would say the other story is sort of the human story, right? It's the Adaba Free Corps, which is sort of a voluntary, as opposed to you're forced into soldiery, set of soldiers from somewhere in what is clearly Africa. Yeah. And they are on their way, traveling by foot and train to Himalaya, to the palace, to bolster up the Emperor's defenses. And it's sort of a lot about their history as a people and how they feel about going to fight this war.
And the third storyline involves Amon. I think he was assigned by Malkador.
Yep, and Constantine Valdor.
In order to hunt down Euphrates Keeler.
Well, that's not how it started. It started with there's also the Death Guard are on the ground, and there's these weird incursions happening. There are demonic incursions happening that imply that the Emperor's Aegis isn't working, and they can't really figure out the pattern, but they think there is some pattern. So Malkador and Constantine Valdor send Aemon to
Amon.
Yeah. I've been calling him Aemon in my head.
It's definitely Amon.
Okay. They send Amon to figure out what's the deal with demons breaking in. There are some cool scenes in there. There are some little vignettes of a dude in a kitchen and demons attack. Very small. Those are cool. And he inadvertently also discovers the cult of the Emperor, that Emperor worship is becoming a thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool. And I would say that the end of that storyline is probably my favorite part of this book.
But we will get to there.
Yeah.
Perturabo, in order to play some 4-dimensional chess with Rogaldorn and to pull a Xanatos gambit, basically decides Rogaldorn knows what I'm going to do, and I know that he knows what I'm going to do. So I'm not going to know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to give my biggest idiot in charge of all of my forces. So he gives the assault on the spaceport to Kroger,
who we've never heard of before.
That is decisively untrue.
I've never heard of him before.
Because you don't pay attention. In fact, he is the main character in Angel Exterminatus.
Was Perturabo even in Angel Exterminatus?
I get that. Kroger is described as a blunt tool with a very blunt mind.
Yeah.
His attack consists of
attacking,
pointing in that direction and attacking. The other 2 prongs of the trident
are Forex
and Falk.
Yeah.
Falk. Falk is not particularly happy with it. Forex is fuming.
Yeah, Forex thinks he should be the person who leads this assault, and he's got all these great plans about how they're going to do it. And meanwhile, Perturabo is in the back scheming like a child. He's just so Doran thinks I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do that because he thinks that I know that he knows that I'm going to do that. There's like a whole scene of that, and it's ridiculous.
Among the community, there's a lot of contention over Perturabo going between good writing and bad writing, and there's a lot of argument. No, there's a lot of well, yes, but there's a lot of arguments over which is the good writing and which is the bad writing. Is the problem because they're wildly different.
Yeah, he seems like a crazy dude. I was kind of a little bit on Team Perturabo in the last book when, like, or I guess in parts of this book too, but it was mostly in the last one when Lyak was like, we're going to do these things and this is how you handle chaos and it's not really a formula. And Perturabo was like, what is the most efficient way to make demons? Let's get on with this. Mm-hmm. I was on Team Perturabo then, but now that he's a full-on crazy person, I'm not sure.
So a large portion of the book involve Kroger sending wave after wave of forces into the Lionsgate spaceport, which is being defended by Fafnir Ram.
To basically die. Like, Kroger is probably the world's worst general. He's just sending dudes at Ron to die. And, like, the rest of that team, like Falk and Forex, just assume they're all dead because Kroger's an idiot.
Right. Ron is doing a decently good job, but he's really not the commander type. Mm-hmm. Like, he is more of a be on the front lines assault type.
Yeah.
He is the commander of the first assault cadre, and he will later go on to be chapter master of the Executioners chapter, which is a big fan favorite.
I can see that. There's definitely some cool, like, he puts, like, who would be the person that he would send into war if he were...
Hagar?
Yeah, I think so.
He gives control.
Yeah, if he were more of a, like, planning sort of general, he makes Hagar stay at the fort and do the planning, and he leads their charge into the spaceport, and that's some really cool writing. They take, like, a fancy elevator, and they, like, do a full 300 style shield wall, and, like a reticulating shield wall that they can move, and it comes out of the elevator, and that's a pretty cool fight scene. I was kind of into that.
So there's a lot of going back and forth as the Imperial Fists try and defend from the Iron Warriors, who are coming from both the top and bottom.
Yep.
There was a neat scene actually with Krogar where he goes to Karn, I think, because he's trying to get the World Eaters to support.
Oh yeah, and he's
push.
like, if you just give yourself to
the
blood god, it'll be fine. And Kroger's like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah. And you know what? That actually makes sense for him.
He's an idiot.
He's an idiot. Karn seems to be fully in favor of Khorne now, and his forces are just pushing wherever they want.
Yeah, they're doing a good job.
Good for him. He doesn't really play a huge role in this.
Okay.
You also have Abaddon and Lyak
who still hate each other,
being sent down with Typhus.
Yes.
In order to try and break the Emperor's Aegis.
Yeah, they are gonna raise a giant hungry worm of some sort.
It's not really a worm. So it's a Nurgle demon. It's a powerful Nurgle demon.
In my head, it kind of looks like a giant maggot with a mouth at one end.
So it does.
And sometimes it has arms.
It does at one point, but that's not its, like, true form.
Gotcha.
The only reason I can say that is because there's an actual model for this guy.
Okay.
And it's basically this squat thing with, like, an enormous mouth and, like, arms that kind of extend off to the side.
Okay.
Basically, at the end of the book where it takes its true form, that's what the model is.
Okay.
I thought that was an interesting scene. You know, Lyak is still pushing Abaddon as, like, oh, you have this great destiny ahead of you, and it's so important that you push these things. I get that because basically out of every character in the Horus Heresy, like in all of 40K really, Abaddon is the only one that spans both.
Yeah,
like,
he's a big deal.
The Primarchs, post-Heresy, not really a big thing.
Right.
Horus, dead. Guilliman was not at the siege.
Yeah.
Like, Abaddon is the only one that is still around in present day that was at the siege and is a big deal.
Yeah. Also, spoiler alert, Lyak dies.
Yeah, actually, I
You
didn't
for-
see that coming.
Me either. He dies to poke a hole in the ages, basically, to get demonness in.
Yeah.
He
Well,
sacrifices himself.
was he personally fighting off Rogel Dorn at some point?
Yeah, Abaddon saw Rogel Dorn and thought he was gonna step in,
Mm-hmm.
and Lyak got in the way.
Mm.
Yeah, and then Chaos imploded himself to let in demons.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was a cool effect that like he exploded into like the sigils on the ground.
Yeah, and now demons are inside, and Euphrates Keeler, who is being tailed by Amon, courtesy of Malkador, has found a small subcult of the Emperor is a god cult.
So there's at this point there's thousands and thousands of little tiny god emperor worshipping cults throughout the Imperium, and this particular one called the Light Bearers.
Yeah, led by a guy named Olivier. I think. Yeah.
Are just sort of doing their own thing, but they pretty clearly are getting. I don't know if they started out this way or if they were manipulated into summoning Nurgle demons.
It's unclear how they started summoning Nurgle demons.
Yeah.
But she goes to one of their ceremonies, and they're obviously happy to have her because she's the sort of prophet of emperor worship, and she has this vision while she's in there at their service where she sees this beautiful tree and it's gorgeous and she can fly and it feels super emotional and religious and beautiful, and she thinks it's the most awesome manifestation of the emperor that she's ever encountered. And so now she's all team Lightbearer, and her and Cinderman become sort of entangled in this Lightbearer thing, but they're also trying to help Amon figure out why demons are incurring, and it's kind of a back and forth because he thinks we should kill all people who worship the Emperor. The Emperor's against that, and Malkador's like, maybe just see where it goes and let it happen. And at the same time, Amon is like, well, I don't know where demons come from, but the Emperor tells us that demons come from religion, and this is clearly a religion, so maybe we should just kill this chick and all her friends.
So this, two things. That representation of Malkador is very in keeping with his personality based on previous events.
Okay. A little wishy-washy?
Well, no. He is one that wants to take particular events and just sort of shift them a little bit. And this is where he got into a lot of trouble with Rogel Dorn, because Rogel Dorn wants complete control over events. And if you remember way back when I don't know if you read Nemesis.
I don't think so.
Okay, Nemesis was basically an assassination attempt on Horus.
Maybe I did, with special assassins from the assassin class. Yeah, I did read that.
And Malkador was the head of the Assassinorum, and Rogel Dorn barges in and reveals everything. So that's kind of the difference between them.
Okay.
Especially now when it's coming to religion.
Okay.
The other point I wanted to make is that I realized there's sort of two different infections going on. So there is the ritual that Typhus and Lyak are performing that summons forth the life within death to act as an infection on the Aegis and influences the Lightbearers. There's also Sarum, who was the first obliterator, who basically turns himself into sort of a computer virus in order to infect
and no one can talk to each Vox signals within the starport are all crazy. That is a thing that's happening.
I thought that was pretty interesting as well. So there's interesting concepts. I didn't love
the overall book.
Like the pacing was not super great. So the third plot that we've only talked about a little bit, the Adabas Free Corps.
I actually think that plot has the biggest twist payoff of all the other ones.
It does. I guess my issue is it feels very similar to what we saw in the previous book with Katsuhiro. It's a human perspective traveling from their home to get to the Imperial Palace to do something. I get that it ends differently, but it was such a large portion of the book.
It was a really large portion. I guess it could have been smaller. I feel like maybe if I were writing this book, which I wouldn't be, I would have written multiple like novellas that went from start to finish in their arc that you read could like after each other, as
Yeah.
opposed to back and forth between each thing, which is a thing that's common in novels. But I feel like I would have liked, a full 3 chapters of the Adaba story and a full 3 chapters of the Euphrates Keeler story and a full 3 chapters of the Perturabo story.
So Gav Thorpe did a very similar thing in the last Gav Thorpe book we read, Angel of Caliban, which was our first episode.
Yeah.
Where he cut back and forth between Imperium Secundus and Caliban.
Yeah. I don't love that approach. Yeah.
I understand you don't love that approach. With this one, though, it just feels like within the community, no one really likes the human perspectives on this. Like,
I liked this human perspective, but I guess that spoiler alert that they're all working for Horus is...
I didn't think that there was enough.
I thought there was enough of Zenobi for me to be invested in her outcome in this war.
Sure.
Which I think is important if you're going to have a reversal reveal.
I did care about her.
Yeah.
But I would say there was a combination of not enough foreshadowing that she was working for Horus, and the reveal just kind of felt weak.
Oh, I thought it was pretty cool. It was like after this whole huge journey and explosions and deaths and like enforcers shooting her comrades and like finally linking up with the rest of the human forces and like climbing on top of a tank and unfurling this flag that's made with the like blood, sweat, and tears of her ancestors, and then yelling for the War Master. I thought that was done really well, actually.
I guess it didn't hit me as strongly as
it had a nice payoff for me. I think.
For me, it was just a moment of, are you kidding me? Like I'm not.
Yeah, I was like, no. What? Horus? Like, what is happening? But then, yeah, there is some foreshadowing in there. There's a little, like, but it happens, like, 30 seconds before you realize that she's about Horus. She's, like, walking to the ceremony, and she's like, oh, I'm thinking back on all the hardships and deaths and bad things that have happened in my life, and they're all for the Emperor. And in my head, I was like, is that a positive or a negative? That's a really poorly written positive. And then I was like, oh, I guess no, not. Yeah. Yeah, I was into it. What I was really into was the Euphrates Keeler story, and I would read a whole book about that, like Amon being a detective, finding out what's going on with this burgeoning religion. I would read that whole book.
Okay.
That's it. Did you hate it or did you love it?
I didn't love it. Like if I had to choose just between
you only get to choose between hate it or love it.
I would go with hate it.
Oh.
Like it felt similar enough to the previous book
that you could have skipped it
with the human angle. I really hate all of the Iron Warriors characters. Like the Trident.
Yeah.
I can't get invested in any of those three.
Okay.
Perturabo's fine. Oh, the talking with Rogaldorn and Perturabo at the end.
Oh, yeah.
That was idiotic.
Yeah, they were like, I'll see you next time. It was like very,
God.
spy movie villain.
I hated that.
Yeah, I wasn't in love with that. I wanted more. I feel like if they're going to meet each other, they have to fight, or the getting to the meeting has to be really, really dramatic, that you're like at the precipice of this climax, and you're like, and you'll finish that in the next book. I'll give you that. But like, this was neither of those. It was like, yeah, maybe they'll fight sometime in the future, and also the buildup was like, meh.
Yeah, there are certain characters. So even though I don't really love Graham McNeil's portrayal of Perturabo's personality, he still made him competent.
Whereas, this one was a little incompetent. Yeah.
Gav Thorpe's and John French's portrayals, I really don't love his Perturabo.
Okay.
Guy Haley's is still my absolute favorite.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of, in all the ways I have read Perturabo, I'm still in the middle. I don't know if I think he's a competent person with good like a good reason for being a traitor, or I think he's like the whiny little child in a family of 7 children, right? Like he just is jealous of all of his brothers and that's it. And I haven't decided yet if I think he's a competent person who has been kind of shafted for his entire backstory, or I think he's been treated as well as any other Primarch and is just a whiny baby.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
that's fair.
It's a little bit, yeah. So I guess if I had to choose if I hated it or loved it, I might say I loved it for
Really?
yeah for the
Adaba,
yeah
no, or
for both of those things,
for
that
for
the
the other
Adaba
two
reveal
ones.
and also for that Euphrates Keeler secret chaos terrifying detective story. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it, I think.
What are we doing next time?
So our next book, seeing as Halloween is coming up,
Woohoo.
we will be jumping out of the Horus Heresy and into Requiem Infernal by Peter Fehevari, which, if you were interested in an investigation into a religion, boy, are you going to love this one.
Peter Fehevari does some good creep. His spoops are good.
He does some good
spoops.
Yeah.
All right, I'm excited for that, and maybe we'll come back with a little bit of Primarch's novel.
Yeah,
you
so
talked about that.
We're currently going through Fulgrim's Primarch novel,
who is arguably the best Primarch.
Which we'll be finishing that up soon, and we'll have another video for that. And I think our next one can be Perturabo if you want. I have read his Primarch novel. It's actually quite good.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll tell you what I think about it.
Okay.
All right. Well, see you next time on His and Hers 40K.
Bye.
Bye.